We are up to Daf Lamed Zayin Amid Aleph, and we had a machlekes between Rabbi Zvid and Rav Papa, where two people purchased a property, not as partners, but each one bought something else. One bought the land, and the other one purchased the tree. According to Rabbi Zvid, the owner of the tree has no share in the land, so the tree eventually shrinks and whittles away. He cannot plant another one. According to Rav Papa, he can. Pshita, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Just a quick introduction. We're going to have Gemara later, Moshe Sadus, and all that. We have a Machlekes, Rabbi Akiva, and the Chachamim. According to Rabbi Akiva, when a person sells, he's generally very generous. So, for example, if he sells to someone a property, but he retains to himself the well, he sold everything, including the path to the well, and he has to then purchase from the purchaser the rights to walk to his well. Even though what you would think he retained as well, he would retain also a way to get to the well. No, you sell very generously, give them everything. The Chacham say no, that no, you make sure that you take care of yourself as well. So if I retained ownership of the well, I definitely, even though we didn't speak about it, I retained ownership also of the trail or the pathway to get to the well. Same machlekes is with hegdish. You're makdish to hegdish. Are you being very generous? You give everything, or you make sure if you retain something, you also retain things that you didn't talk about, but it's all supplements that thing that you're keeping for yourself. You bear that in mind. We'll come back to that. Pshita, there's no question. Mochar karka v'shayid ilanus. Reuben sells which is a little different than before. Before there were two people, one person buying the tree, one person buying the land. Here you have one person, a vendor and a purchaser. The vendor sold the land, but he retained ownership of the trees. So what do we say in this case? So there's no question. Is yesh loy karka. There's no question that when he got the trees, he also retained ownership of the land, which means that if the tree dies, he can then go ahead and plant another one. That's how Rashbam learns. You plant another one. Afilu Rabbi Akiva. Now, Rabbi Akiva, who said before, Rabbi Akiva said when it came to the case of a well, you sold not only the land, but also the land where the path was that you can get to the well. And I have no access. If I want to use the well, I have to purchase that right. So Rabbi Akiva, when I sold the entire land and all I kept was the trees, I didn't keep the land underneath the trees. So if my tree dies, I shouldn't be able to replant. Says no. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, when does Rabbi Akiva say that you sell everything and I have to buy back the rights? Something that he didn't think about. Why didn't he think about? Why? Over there, in the case of the boy and the deuce, I say to myself, my boy doesn't anyway. A tree, it eats the soil and it weakens the ground and the roots keep on growing and it causes damage to the Bava Basra. So therefore, you anticipate this guy really doesn't want my tree here. So my tree is not helping him out at all, in fact, it's impacting negatively. So therefore, when I kept the trees to myself, I was going to say, I also wanted to make sure that I have the right to continue having this tree. Mashenk, in the case of a bird, my bird is not going to cause any damage to you, and therefore I should be able to, if the bird, whatever it is, I want to put, I want to have what do you call? As long as I think I don't cause any damage, I'm happy to give you everything. In fact, you can plant all the way up to my bird. My bird doesn't cause any damage to your land. So I'm very happy just to keep the bird. And I'm not thinking, but how am I going to get to the bird? All I'm thinking about, I want to make sure that I'm nice to you and that I don't hurt you. So I'm not hurting you. So I'm not in any way negatively impacting upon you. So therefore I say, you can have everything. I'll just keep the bird. And I didn't think, it slipped my mind how to get to the bird. When it comes to trees, the kamatrish about it. When it comes to trees, we're actually affecting the land in a negative way. Then she then he anticipates, thinking, hey, that my tree, if it falls down one day, he's not going to let me. He in fact doesn't want my tree in the first place. So therefore, I'm thinking I need to make sure that I can keep not only the tree but the rights to the tree. So the tree dies, I can plant another one.
Who's saying that?
This is what the Gemara is saying. That even according to Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara is saying here, we don't know who the Mandam is saying. The Gemara, Stam Gemara, that even according to Rabbi Akiva, it says that when you sell Meicher Ban Yafa Meicher, but when it comes to a tree, so you would think according to Rabbi Akiva, when it comes to a tree, I'm selling you the whole land, including the land under my tree. So as soon as my tree dies, the vendor, he cannot replant it again. So no, even though Akiva made in this case, the vendor is smart enough to know that you don't really want the tree. So he's thinking, if I want to keep the tree, I want to keep the rights to the tree. So if my tree dies, I'm going to plant it again. As if we spoke about it off and hate. We didn't have to talk about it. It's obvious. Because the Eloi Shire, because if I don't think about my tree and I keep, the rights to the land underneath, Laymalay, this buyer can say to me, Akoid Elon of Azil. He could tell me, take a tree, uproot it, and go. Now, according to most people, it doesn't mean physically take the tree, even though we had one opinion before it does. They take the tree now and take it away. But it means is as soon as the tree dies, pack your bags and go. I don't want to see you again. What about the following case, all the way around? So this case that we spoke about was where the owner retained ownership of the trees, sold the land. What about the other way around? What about Mochad Ilanas? He sold the trees, but Vishaya Karka Lipon. He sold the trees, but he retained ownership of the land. So L'chayda, this is the machlekes of Akiva Rabban. According to Rabbi Akiva, the Amam Moicha Ba'in Yafa Moicha. According to Akiva, said what? That a Moicha sells very generously. So when I sold him the trees, not only did I sell the tree, I also sold him the land underneath the tree. So if his tree dies, he can go ahead and plant it again. And the Rabbanon who holds that what that moiche ba'ayin ra moiche, when you sell something, you sell as little as possible. So I sold you the tree I sold you. No share in the land whatsoever. Now the Gemara goes further. We just had a machlekes Rav Zvi and Rav Papa where there were two people, not vendor and buyer, but two buyers. One guy bought the land and one guy bought the trees. Rav Zvi said the one who ends up with the trees has no share in the land, and the one who ends up, and according to Rav Papa, the one who ends up with the trees has a share in the land. So Gemara says that even according to Rabbi Zvi, according to Papa, what our statement we just made, that it depends, it revolves around the machlekes of Kivacham, still stays, and the Gemara explains. Even according to Rabbi Zvi, that says, ain't lie that the person who bought the trees, in the case of two different people, has no share in the land. So what would he hold in this case where the vendor sold the trees? He also shouldn't have a share in the land. No. When does Rabbi Zvi voice his opinion, he opines, there were two buyers. And there the just like we said yesterday, the Amalei says to him, the owner of the land says to the owner who bought the tree, you're not getting a share in the land there. I don't care, even according to Rabbi Akiva, generally when you buy something, the vendor is very generous, but not in this case. You know why? I have no share in your trees. I have no share in your purchase. You have no share in my purchase. And because I bought the land, I got the entire land. So even according to Rabbi Akiva, even according to Rabbi Zvi, who says, generally speaking, in that case, they both bought, and the guy in the trees ends up no land, but over here, what do you call it? And that's why over there you don't end with any land, but here he'd be made that according to Rabbi Akiva you would. There's only one vendor and one buyer. So that tiny that just like you ended up with this doesn't exist. Go back to the machlekes of Akiva Chum, and according to Rabbi Akiva that says that a moiche ba'ayin yafa moiche. So the vendor sold the trees. He sold trees with the rights underneath the tree. And the other way around. Pop is the one who said that when two people bought, the guy from the tree does get a share in the land. In fact, this expression is b'chatzi karka, and we had a machlekes yesterday, literally between shaynim, whether it means literally he gets half the property or just enough to maintain that tree, but he gets the property. So the kaida according to Papa, when a vendor sells the trees, the owner of the tree should get the property. We said according to Chachamim, you don't get the property. He said, "Tell you, I fill it up, Papa." The Amar says, yes, in the case of two people, the guy who bought the trees does have the rights to replant, so he has a property, the land underneath. There's a counter tanya. What's a counter tanya? That's the case with two people and bought the property, one guy the land, one guy the tree. Why? The Amar says to him, the guy that owns the tree says to the guy to the land, he was very generous with you because the one who owns the land owns it forever. He keeps on using it again and again. He owns it forever. So why shouldn't I keep the trees forever? Just like you have longevity, so should I. So what do you tell me in my say when my trees die, I can no longer replant it? It's not fair. So it's as if it's an unwritten agreement between the vendor when he sold to these two people that just like he sold to the land forever, he sold the guy in the tree forever. So the guy in the tree has the right to replant all the time. He sold to the good, generous eye. Only good, generous eye. That's the argument there. That's why the Papa says according to everybody there, the person who bought the tree gets the rights to the land. Here there's one vendor or one buyer. Goes back to the machlekes of Akiva Chachamim. A moiche ba'ayra moiche according to Chachamim, a guy sells as little as possible, and therefore you don't have the land underneath the trees. Okay, next piece of next in Amri Nehedoi. We learned before that there's a certain You have a field, a stay elon, a field of trees. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. If you're very sparing, let's say you only have two trees in a saw. Saw is 50 amas by 50 amas. If you only have two trees in a saw and you sell somebody the trees, so we'll have a Mishnah later, machlekes, whether you get any land with those trees or not. But when it comes to three trees, we say you get land with the trees, the land around the tree, so that you can have enough, including to get light in there, and also even to have a basket and climb up the tree to pick the fruit. So you get even a little bit less of land around the tree. No, whatever land is necessary to be able to use the tree in its full use, you get with three trees. We also learned yesterday that if you have 10 trees in a saw, 10 trees in a saw, that's considered an orchard. If you have 11 or 12, it's considered a forest, and it's useless. So before we go on, so a minute ago we said 3 trees, now we say 10 trees. How does that work? So the way it used to be, as Hashem explained, when we say 3 trees, we're talking about proper trees. When we say 10, we're talking about natias. So it's natias, saplings. And the way they used to do it, they used to plant, the saplings don't need too much ground, so they used to plant 10 saplings in an area, and somehow or another they all support each other. And then when they grow to a certain height, you pull out some of the saplings and you replant it somewhere else. You're left with 3 trees, you have 3 torsa. Saplings, 10. So which means that the saplings, when they're planted, you're going to pull them out. The plan is eventually to pull them out, but long term. It doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It's long term. So it comes along the Hedoi and says the following. We say that you have that 3 years is a chazaka because after that you don't keep a star. But if the Bava Basra is moichel, then you shouldn't retain the star. So in Hedoi he says ochlan b'tzufin. If everything, let's say, is all crowded together, ain loy chazaka. If it's all crowded together, there's no chazaka here at all whatsoever. We're talking about, let's say you have 30 trees, and you have 15 trees. We said before 10 is saplings is the maximum. You have 15 in a base saw. Then we say it's not a chazaka. Why? Even if you were there for 3 years, it's not a normal orchard. It's not really grown properly. So the Bava Basra wasn't even bothered. Bava Basra thinks, well, the way I don't have to be Michael because everyone can see you're not a real farmer. You're not a real owner of this. You're a real owner. You attend to the trees. You plant to, exactly the way it's supposed to be. You're not, which means you just, you're here for short term because it's not yours. So you don't really care. You don't care for the property. You don't care for the soil. You don't care for the tree. You don't really care. So therefore I wasn't Michael. It doesn't prove in any way that I exceeded ownership to you. I wasn't doing anything to fill anyway. It didn't bother me. So that's what Herdoi says. It's not a chazaka because eventually you're going to pull them out anyway. Maskell Rava says, Rava, I have a question on me. According to this, I misha da safsata. Let's say you have a row of this animal fodder called a safsata. According to some training, it takes 3 years to grow, but according to others, it takes 30 days to grow. And but the way they grow, it's crowded. They're all on top of each other. You push it, they're all on top of each other. They grow. So according to you. My because according to you, your logic, eventually you're going to pull it out, and because eventually you're going to pull it out, so therefore the guy said, "What happened? What have you made for? You're going to pull it out anyway." Because that's how you do it. You grow them, everything together, and then eventually you pull them out. So, according to you, how are you claiming such a land? How are you ever claiming it? Or because you can't make a chazaka, you'll have to keep the star the rest of your life. You can't make a chazaka because I will say, "Oh, well, you're going to pull it out anyway," so I didn't bother being much. Elam, what Rabbi says. So Rabbi argues with Nidor. Doesn't like the Sodom because eventually you pull it out. Therefore, the guy said, I wasn't Meichel. Elam, but Rabbi, even if eventually you pull it out, right now it's there. You should have been Meichel. It wasn't Meichel, he's kind of. Elam, Rabbi, Machar and the Tzufin ain't like Karka. This is what, if you want to talk a din about the Tzufin, forget about Chazaka. And there is a chazaka there. If you're there for a number of years, the guy wasn't meicher, even though it's congested and everything else doesn't matter. So what if you're going to pull it out? But right now, he should have been meicher. But I'll tell you what, we want to talk about a tzufin. I'll tell you what Dim can do about a tzufin. He says here, machna the tzufin ain't like karka. That if you sold somebody the tzufin, let's say more than 10 saplings in a base saw. So before we said you had 10 saplings, so you sold it, you get the whole karka with it. But if you sold 11, 12, 13, it's a forest, you don't get any karka. Why? Because definitely you're going to pull it out. You're going to uproot everything else. And it's not as day Elam. You're going to have to pull it out pretty soon. It's not like a normal saw, you have 10 saplings. You give it 5, 10 years before, you start pulling them out and replanting somewhere else. Here, it's just not going to last very long. You have to pull them out. So therefore, since it's aimed to be pulled out, it's not really as day Elon. And the guy says, if I wasn't Moshe, you could pull it anyway. That's the din. Amar Abzeh says, Abzeh said, this is a machlekes of Tanoim. This concept, because you're going to pull it out, and therefore it's not as if it's not there anymore. Or you say the fact is right now it's there, it's there. What's the machlekes? The din is you're not allowed to plant climbs next to a vineyard. But if it's an individual vine, you're not allowed to plant within 3 tvachim. But if it's a vineyard, and we actually had more say to the definition of a vineyard, we another place 5, like a tail, two and a tail. But if it's a vineyard, then you have to separate a certain distance 4 amos. Because you need the room, to work around it. You're not allowed to plant the zerayim within 4 amos. But the definition of a vineyard. So we have kedem. Let's say you have a vineyard, and you have to have a gap of space between each vine of 4 amos, because each vine needs work around it. So you need 4 amos between 2 rows of vines. But here what happened was a kedem shenatu al pochab amos. You had 3 rows, and there was less than 4 amos space between each row. Which means that eventually you're going to have to pull out the middle row because you have to work on the vineyard. You can't get in. You can't bring in machinery. You can't do anything because there's not enough space. But right now it's still there. How do we view that? So kedem shenatu al pochab amas. There's less than 4 amos. This is gap between the rows. Rav Shimon says ain't a kedem. It's not a kedem, and therefore you can plant zeroyim much closer, up to 3 tvachim away from the outside vine, the perimeter. The Chacham say how is a kedem? It is a kedem. How can it be kedem? You don't have the gaps. Because we're royin at semchoyim kilu ena. Since you're going to have to pull out the middle row of vines because you can't work with the rest. So it's as if it's already pulled out. So we see this savara of whether we say it's as if it's pulled out already or not. The machlekes of Nedoyi and Rav is actually machlekes of Nedoyi. Another thing Nedoyi says, if somebody, let's say, sells a dikla to his friend, he sells him a palm tree. What are you calling it? Mishipula. Excuse me, from the bottom of the tree at the heimer, to the very upgrowth, to the very recesses down in the bottom of the world. Meaning, according to Rashbam, at least what it means is, bring my to show him exactly like 3 or 4 shots in it. According to Rashbam, it means basically that you have the right to replant a tree. You have the right, I give you not just a tree, but also all the earth that's beneath the tree. So therefore, you can replant the tree. Yeah, no, it's just figuratively speaking. And you can replant the tree because the roots go down. Only underneath the tree. So other Chinese say no, it doesn't mean that at all, because we said before you don't get the tree. I've seen them in as well. But it says it means he has the land underneath. So when the tree dies, he could put a boy right underneath the tree. One of the big wide red oak trees, so it's a big space, it has a big gap in space. If he loses the tree because it died, he cannot plant another tree because tree damages the land. Remember, it damages the land around and the root spread, but he owns the land underneath, the earth underneath, so he can build a well underneath where it was. That's what some other Chinese. Okay, masculine Rav. So Rav asked the question: why do you own the earth underneath? The lema let him say, I sold you like the saffron from Rishka, which grows, quickly, and that's it. It dies. It's finished. So all you had was the rights to the tree. Who gave you rights to the earth underneath it? I sold you this, and I let you use my earth, my soil to plant over there your saffron, and then afterwards, that's it. It's over. So the same thing with the tree. Even though I sold you the tree because you can bear fruits. Once the tree lost the ability to bear fruits anymore, produce fruits anymore, finished. End of story. What does that have to do with the land? I never gave the earth for any other purpose. According to Rashi, the earth to plant another tree, according to others to make a hole there. The only thing I gave you was a tree is for the paytas. Once it's gone, it's gone. Why do you just like the karkum? So why should he have any more rights to the karkum? Once it's dead, remove it, and it's gone. Just like a saffron, once it's dead, you can't plant again. Same over here. Tree's gone. So why would you say that when you sell a tree, not only selling the tree, you're selling the ground, the earth underneath it? Rava says it's talking about the more machmas taina. When you say that if he bought the tree, he gets the earth that's underneath it, it's talking about he comes with a taina. This guy who bought the tree says the taina, look, when I bought this tree, he mefedish told me that I have the tree and I have the rights to the earth underneath it. And I had a shtar, but 3 years ago, 3 years, more than 3 years, I bought the tree. And I lost a shot, like any other case of chazaka. And we're saying it that if he has a taina, he's believed. So no, stam, if he bought a tree, you don't get the earth underneath it. Why? You just bought a tree for the fruits, the tree dies, gone. But if he tainas that I bought the tree with the rights of the earth underneath it, my status, more than 30 years, he is believed. The son of Chizah, remember, traces the Zion base an argument Shisha, which means older, means he's the oldest son of Chizah, or Shisha means when Chizah was older, it means he's the youngest son of Chizah. Senior and junior. It can be the opposite. It's exactly. Exactly. What would be so according to you, if he bought a churkum which grows very quickly, he bought the if he bought the earth underneath it, how is he ever going to have a chazaka? Because how is he ever going to be able to replant it again? How is he ever able to have it again for the rest of his life? He has to keep on the start. Because generally speaking, churkum is sold is just for the rights for the churkum, and once it's gone, goodbye. So, but if I bought the rights to keep on replanting it, how am I going to do it? The only way is to keep a style the rest of my life. And not that. But what's the meicher going to do to make sure that this guy doesn't come tomorrow and say, I have a taina, I have a chazaka with a taina, that what can the meicher do over here? Because let's say after 3 years, he'll say, well, you didn't protest. I didn't protest because it takes 3 years to grow, 3 years to work the whole thing out. So, and you bought that rights. And then the 3 years are up, you finally got your first thing. I'm telling you goodbye. And he said, what goodbye? I bought the soil from you. And about Ayim and Meicher, it's more than 3 years. What's the Balabas supposed to do in this case? And he can't be Meicher because this is what we learned before. This is a Mechia Lechatzoyin. What do I mean, Meicher? I gave you the right. You have a right to be there. You have a right to plant the saffron. I'm going to make Meicher only that you don't have a right to the earth underneath. That's only like a half a Mecha. Is that considered a Mecha? It doesn't sound like a Mecha because you have a right to be there, but only for the saffron, not for the ground underneath. You want to answer? Yes. Yes, there is such a thing called a half a macha. He should have been meicher the land and the earth underneath it. Because Ela came, I'll prove it to you. Hani Muguri has a few days ago. Hani Mashkanta the Surya, those Mashkin the Surya where you gave a loan and then he gives you back security, a piece of land, and you take the fruits of it or the grains every year, let's say for a number of years, 10 years, and you deduct every year a tenth of the loan and then it's gone. And why is that permitted? Because it's a fixed amount, a tenth of the loan, regardless of whether I'm profiting, regardless of whether I'm enduring a loss, it doesn't make a difference. The cost of a and this was right, the Mishnah, when the years are up, whatever years we agree on, Tefuk out of that this land here should leave me and go to you without any more money. The loan is cleared. Now he has a right to be in that. The lender has a right to be in that land. And if you tell me you can't do and tell me you don't belong here when he does, is he covers the Ishtamashkant. If this Mal was a devious person, he's going to conceal this contract that he has. This was a Ishtamashkant. And 10 years later, who remembers will say, "The I bought it." And how can I believe what should Balbos do? If you cannot do a Mechir Lechatzoyin, Balbos is stuck. You can't be Mechir because you have a right to be there. Is that right that the Bachar make a takana how to organize this loan and get paid back and cause this guy, the borrower, a loss that in 10 years from now people don't remember the lender and say, I bought it? The balabas, the borrower should have been meicher every few years. You should know that he only has rights to the fruits, to the yield, but not to the land itself. The same thing by saffron. He has to, even though the guy has a right to be there, you have to be consistently meicher because you couldn't make a mechia lechatzayin. Okay, up to the Mishnah. We'll continue tomorrow. Mitzvah.